Licensing Committee today. Welcome also to members of the public who are watching the meeting via our YouTube channel. Councillors, please be mindful of the etiquette guidance that has been issued, which will ensure you can be viewed and understood by members of the public watching at home. May I please remind everyone to behave with due courtesy, tolerance and respect for one another's views and conduct themselves in a reasonable way. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Secretary of State has published the local authorities and police and crime panels coronavirus flexibility of local authority and police and crime panel meetings, England and Wales, regulations 2020. Under section 78 of the Coronavirus Act 2020, the regulations enable the council to hold committee meetings remotely via a number of means, including telephone and video conferencing. Right, on to apologies for absence. I have Councillor Peter Abraham. Does the clerk or members know of anyone else?
I think Councillor Lucy Whittle's having technical problems. Is that right? Oh, there she is. She's on. Thank you. But I think everyone's here now, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to declarations of interest then. May I ask that if any councillors have any interest to declare regarding the items on today's agenda? No, that's great. In that case, on to the minutes of the previous meeting. Can we agree them as a true record?
Chair, I don't appear on them. Can I be added, please? I was present.
Brilliant.
I'll ensure that's done.
I'm not on the agenda for this meeting either, so I'm probably not on the list somewhere.
Oh, right. Okay, I'll check.
Cheers.
Can we have a seconder for the minutes then? Brilliant. So they're agreed. Right, we'll go on now to public forum. Details of the statements and questions received have been published on the website. Members would have received a copy. We received 5 questions and 28 statements for agenda item 6, with 13 persons registered to speak. We received no public forum for agenda item 7. We will invite those registered to speak to address the committee for 1 minute. They will be brought in from the waiting room, so please be patient as they may have technical issues and or delays as they connect. Please admit the first 3 speakers in the Zoom meeting.
Just bear with me, Chair. We're just going to admit Katie Taylor from Women's Voice. She should be there now, and Anne Smith should be there now.
Pierce was number 1. Is that he's not here or?
No, he's not here. So if we could go to Katie Taylor, please.
Right, welcome to Katie Taylor. Please unmute. You have 1 minute to address the committee.
Just press that button there. Have you got? Can you see it at the bottom, Katie?
Yes, sorry. Hello, hi. We just wanted to say that Bristol Women's Voice is wholeheartedly in support of the move to nil cap policy on sexual entertainment venues. The ability to live free from male violence and harassment on the street or in transport when socialising remains a top priority for the women that we work with. And we really welcome that the council has listened to and taken into consideration the research into women's experiences of how sexual objectification, which is encouraged and practiced within SEVs, acts to reinforce gender inequality and male violence. The international research shows the sex trade, including SEVs, is supply-led and not demand-led. And so where there are no SEVs available and the sex trade is not accepted as normal or legal, far fewer men behave in this way. And so this move will also support men and boys, and indeed some women and girls, to move on from old-fashioned and harmful attitudes and stereotypes about women and about sex and about entitlement and power that hold society back from greater equality. And we feel that removing sexual entertainment venues from the city would also ensure that public space is more inclusive and safer and welcoming for women and girls and LGBT people in Bristol.
Time.
Thank you very much. Welcome then to Anna Smith. You have 1 minute. Please unmute.
Good morning, everyone. I wholeheartedly support everything that Katie said. I'm speaking on behalf of the Women's Safety Task Group in Bristol, and some research that's been done into The impact of SEVs, and there is evidence that women working in SEVs experience violence and sexual objectification, and that there is also a lot less safety around SEVs because of the behaviour of men coming out. I've experienced that personally as somebody who lived near one in my past. So we're speaking on behalf of women in Bristol's safety. Also, the women that work within the SEVs do not have strong employment rights. And are not safe from all the other issues that come around with that. So we wholeheartedly support the NILCAP suggestion.
Thank you very much. Chris Green, I can't see.
No, I couldn't see him in the waiting room.
Okay.
Margot is present, Chair.
Brilliant. Margot, please unmute and you have 1 minute to address the committee.
Hi everyone, my name is Margot. I've been dancing at Urban Tiger since August 2019. So before I started dancing, I worked several minimum wage jobs, which made me very unhappy, constantly stressed, and it was really affecting my mental health. Dancing is the best thing that ever happened to me. I started living instead of surviving. It made me feel so much happier, confident and empowered. Closing down our venues after a year in employment, added to the stress of being in a pandemic, would be a terrible decision. It is International Women's Day today, and this shows that our fight is far from over. You cannot today take away our choice of making a living from dancing in the way we choose to use our bodies. What we do is completely legal and consensual. This strongly comes across as slut shaming. You cannot blame our venues and profession for the horrible acts that some men do commit. Taking away our workplaces would be taking a step back when it comes to gender equality. The NILCAP would be pushing dozens of women into poverty and unemployment. Instead of protecting us, it would be putting us in danger by pushing our industry underground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, the next I say is Helen Mott. You have 1 minute if you can unmute, please.
Thanks. I'm here speaking on behalf of Bristol Fawcett today, and we wanted to say thank you to you. We've been consulted by the council for over 20 years now on its aims to make equality a reality for all women and girls in the city. So thank you for carefully listening to and evaluating the evidence that was submitted to you about the impact of SEVs on all women and girls in Bristol during your consultation period. You are supporting Bristol City Council to join other councils in embracing its duties under local, national and international legislation and frameworks for equality. Thank you for seeing the bigger picture for the years ahead. Thank you for making a change that will create more inclusive, safer and more welcoming public spaces for women in our city centre and safer homes for women and girls, which is a priority for all of us. Thank you for helping to create a city where men and boys are encouraged to move on from old-fashioned and harmful attitudes towards all the girls and women in their lives.
Thank you very much. I can't see Charles.
No, he's not there, but you can go down to Kerry Hall.
Yep, thank you. Kerry Hall, can you unmute, please? You've got a minute.
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. I want to make clear today that this is not about whether you think lap dancing clubs should exist or not. It's about understanding this type of entertainment does exist and is not just going to disappear. The question is, would you prefer that it's highly regulated by keeping dedicated venues to happen in, or do you vote a NILCAP to get rid of these venues and effectively deregulate it and throw away the rule book? All a NILCAP will achieve is that this type of activity will be provided at any type of venue all over the city with far less regulation. The complete opposite of what campaigners for a NILCAP actually want to achieve. Currently, the council has full control over these two venues in question, with one of the most strictest licences and most successful SEV policies in the UK. I have no idea why you would even be considering relinquishing this control and regulation you currently have. They are well-run venues where the women and men who work in them are protected. If you remove this policy, I'm fearful of what will become of the industry, and it's going to be like we are going back in time and not moving forwards. I cannot stress enough how counterproductive this would be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. If we move now on to Sarah Classic, please. You've got 1 minute. Please unmute.
Hi, I'm Sarah Classic. I'm a Liberal Democrat council candidate for Hengrove and Whitchurch Park, and I am against the NILCAP being proposed by the committee. I think it sets an illiberal and bad precedent in Bristol to close down legal venues because of ideology and because the committee finds it distasteful. I think the majority female workforce will be put out of work after a pandemic, which has already affected their earnings, and possibly into less safe work in unlicensed, unregulated clubs. The clubs have shown that they abide by their licensing laws. They do not are not a magnet for antisocial behaviour and do not nuisance their neighbours, and yet they are constantly under scrutiny and asked to close. I think this policy is rooted in misogyny, ideology, and it has no place in Bristol. And I seriously hope the licensing committee consider the impact, whether this will actually have a positive impact in Bristol or whether it will further detriment women in this city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go on to Jasmine Milne. You have 1 minute, please unmute.
I've been dancing for 14 years and I love my job. It gives me so much time to spend with my family, to care for the people that I love. If you shut the clubs down, my first plan would be to work in another club. As the 2 Bristol clubs are the best run clubs I have found, and I've worked in many, this would inevitably mean me working in less safe environments. It would mean finding new accommodation in cities I don't know, parking in city centres I'm unfamiliar with, and walking to and from the club at night alone, which is very frightening. If this didn't work, I'd have to get a 35, 40-hour week, either locally, which is unlikely as I live in the middle of nowhere, or I'd have to stay away all week. And needless to say, the impact on my family would be unbearable. It would affect my husband's ability to work. And also try getting a job with stripper on your CV. It's almost impossible. Strip clubs are a symptom, not a cause of the patriarchy. If you alleviate a symptom, it makes you feel better for a bit, but it doesn't address the problem, the root cause. To blame strip clubs and by association strippers for male violence and rape against women and girls makes me feel sick. That's a disgusting claim. I demand you move your focus from us and instead toward these criminals, these abusive, violent, dangerous men. I want to be part of this.
Fine, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. If we move on to Brendan Murphy, please. You have 1 minute if you can unmute.
Hi, I'm representing Barbie, which is the Bristol Association of Restaurants, Bars and Independent Establishments. We represent over 400 independent venues in Bristol and over 9,400 workers in the nighttime economy, and we are urging the council to vote against a nil cap on SEVs today. We are extremely concerned that yet again, a small number of people are looking to close down 2 extremely well-run venues in Bristol city centre as part of a nil cap SEV policy. The venues in question, Central Chambers and Urban Tiger, are extremely well run, owned by females, and give employment to a huge number of dancers, as well as the ecosystem of supported jobs such as bartenders, security, cleaners, delivery drivers and more. Having been closed for nearly a year, the venues will now be presented with yet another large legal bill, and the mental health and well-being of the owners and workers seem of little, if any, importance to Bristol City Council. This is not a way to support hospitality and help it recover from the pandemic. And for a thriving nighttime economy, both residents and visitors to the city need to have a choice of destination rather than being dictated to as to what and where they can visit. We urge you to vote against the nil cap policy and support Bristol independent businesses.
Thank you very much. We can move on to Tracy Hale, please. You have 1 minute if you can unmute. You're still muted.
Hi, good morning all. The shutting of the SEV venues will lead to many workers losing their jobs. The recent consultation on SEVs showed over 60% of the population of Bristol had no problem with well-run legislated premises. So I ask, how many more consultations do we have to run before the word of the city is accepted? If you deregulate SEVs, the strip club workers will be forced underground into unregulated, dangerous places. And why is it just female venues who are targeted for closure, when a male dance company, the Full Black Monty and others, are allowed to perform just down the road in a local hotel with no opposition or regulation? Where's the equality there? What about the massage parlours and the sex shops? Why are these acceptable and not SEVs? Why would you want to take such a backward step when your legislation has done so much to protect everyone? Both the council and the owners of these premises have worked very hard and openly to ensure that SEV policy is both fit for purpose and enforced. Your policy works well, very well, and we fully support it, but we cannot support the unfair closure of these venues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Finally, Chloe, you have 1 minute if you can unmute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
As a dancer, I'm extremely saddened to hear that once again the council is proposing a change in policy for SEVs and jeopardising the livelihoods of our predominantly female workforce in a time of such instability, uncertainty and anxiety. Unemployment has doubled in Bristol and the nightlife industry has been completely decimated by the pandemic, and we do not need any further job losses. The clubs are well regulated and a great deal of care is taken to make sure that we're safe. There's no tolerance for inappropriate behaviour of any kind, and personally I feel safer in these clubs than I would in a regular nightclub or bar, and I greatly value having this place to work. There's a great danger of driving the industry underground and putting our safety at risk were there to be a nil cap. The unfounded claim that it's strip clubs causing city centre assaults is effectively punishing and blaming a majority of female workers for male violence against women. The focus should always be on the perpetrator and no blame should ever be taken away from them. If you don't like strip clubs, that's perfectly fine, but ridding someone of their choice to do as they please with their own body is unjust. We're not exploited, we're choosing to work here and fighting to continue to do so because we want to and we enjoy our work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The other three haven't turned up, have they, Claudette?
No, they haven't. I'll check my emails, but they were given the time, Chair, and to appear, and they haven't arrived. Okay, thank you.
Okay, then we'll close the public forum and go on to agenda item 6, which is the sex establishment policy consultation. Can I ask Abby to present the report to the committee?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So the first thing to say is that this report is not asking you to make a final decision on any policy. It's simply asking to approve a consultation on the draft that is attached to your papers. I'll run through the report. I don't propose to go through the papers attached. You've all had them and seen them. They have been published. I would just remind you that some of them are restricted. So if you do want to refer to any of the papers, please be mindful of that and don't say any names that are associated because some of it is personal information that is not publicly available. Thank you. So the report is in front of you, obviously. The significant issues are that the draft policy proposes a change to the appropriate numbers in respect of sexual entertainment venues for 2 of the 3 defined localities, that's City Centre and Old Market. It has been updated to take account of changes to legislation, expanded to cover all forms of sex establishments, and we've updated the conditions, made a few tweaks within the policy itself. You obviously don't have to have a policy. You have had a policy since 2011, and that's when sex establishments were incorporated into this same legislation as sex shops and sex cinemas. You currently have 2 licensed sexual entertainment venues, and the report says 4 licensed sex shops. I think actually that's now 2 licensed sex shops within the city. There's no licensed sex cinemas. So in terms of context, decisions in respect to the policy aren't an executive function. They're dealt with by yourselves, the licensing committee. And a working group was set up in 2016 to review the policy. And that working group's met with stakeholders, interested parties, reviewed a wide range of documentation in considering the draft policy. And the working group met a number of times between October 2016 and February 2021. And it's heard from a wide range of various stakeholders, including the Police and Crime Commissioner, the police, number of groups and individuals who oppose sexual entertainment venues, proprietors and performers, and Destination Bristol. And they've had a range of views, often with competing interests and opinions. And you also heard from officers regarding the legal framework under which the policy is created and maintained, and about decisions of other local authorities with regard to their policies. You have a copy of the summary of other local authority decisions, which gives brief details about whether other local authorities have designated numbers or nil caps at your Appendix C. And you also invited, your working group also invited comments from a wide range of stakeholders, and there were 17 responses and they're attached at Appendix D. One response was requested not to be disclosed publicly, that's at Appendix E, and is restricted just to yourselves. For viewing, and 4 respondents didn't provide permission, so those haven't been included in your papers today. The working group invited those respondents to speak to them. 9 attended, and the working group additionally invited a performer and the operations director for the Business Improvement District. And you have a copy of the summary and minutes from each meeting at your Appendix F. And again, 2 respondents didn't provide permission to disclose the summaries, and so they're not included in your papers. And in advance of a formal consultation on any revised policy, a questionnaire was distributed online. That was available to the public through the early part of 2018, and it was widely publicised through social media and communications, and also on the website as well. And we also contacted those people who had commented previously and any relevant stakeholders, and it sought the views of a wide range of people. We received 1,400 responses, just over 1,400 responses, and the full report is at Appendix G. That's quite a high number of responses. I think at the time it was second only to the council tax consultation. So that is a very good number of responses to have received on a consultation. And in the questionnaire, there were a number of questions where a large proportion of people neither agreed nor disagreed with the statement, indicating that there wasn't a definitive split between those who believe sex establishments should be permitted in Bristol and those who don't. Following on from the questionnaire, a consultation on a draft policy, which was similar to the previous draft policy and maintained the numbers in the same localities, was available in late 2019. It was again publicised widely, and we saw a wide range of views from stakeholders and various other parties. We also engaged the citizen panel, and that's a panel that's made up of a range of people who reflect the demographics of the city and regularly respond to consultations across a range of issues. And again, we received quite a high number of responses, around 1,000 responses, and 425 responses from the citizen panel, which is about 35% of their membership. We received also additional submissions outside of the consultation questions, as well as comments alongside the questions within the consultation, and the full report's available at Appendix H. And again, Appendix H1 is restricted and so is not available to the public. The draft EQIA was reviewed after the consultation results had been analysed, and an updated draft EQIA is available at your Appendix I. In the results of the consultation, and I think this has been mentioned already in some of the public forum, it can be seen that the majority of members of the public agreed with the proposed numbers for the current localities, and it was around 59 to 66% agreed. However, a significant proportion of people, between 21 and 33%, which is not, it's not insignificant, didn't agree with the proposed number, and that alongside strong representations received outside of the consultation questions. That was alongside strong representations received outside of the consultation questions from a number of groups who felt that to permit SEVs in particular undermined the public sector equality duty and the council's commitment to ensuring the safety of women in public spaces. And a number of comments were made alongside the consultation responses relating to the fear that some women experience when in proximity to these premises, whether objectively justified or not, which is relevant when the committee considered whether to impose a particular policy. There were a number of other decisions that have been taken by other authorities during the course of your policy review of SEVs. In particular, Sheffield City Council was subject to 2 judicial reviews. One was in relation to an application and the other in relation to their policy review. And in particular, in respect to the policy review, the court found that Sheffield had failed to have due regard to their public sector equality duty to eliminate discrimination, harassment and victimisation, advance equality and foster good relations. And you as the council must have in your decision making, you must have due regard to the requirements under the Equalities Act. That doesn't suggest that you have to come to one conclusion or another, but you have to weigh the evidence and give equality considerations the weight that's proportionate in the circumstances, given the potential impact of the policy on equality. All of those documents that are in your papers, you also have the draft policy, draft standard conditions and draft EQIA in there as well. And in consideration of the above and taking into account the EQIA, it's proposed that a revised policy is put out for consultation with revised numbers in the localities that are already defined, but with no changes to any other areas, because you haven't defined any other localities at this point. It would be proposed that the public consultation would be in line with government guidance for 12 weeks, dates to be determined. The dates should be defined that they don't result in the consultation being launched or the results being published during the pre-election period. And in light of COVID-19, obviously, it was at one point suggested that the elections might be delayed, and therefore officers are requesting that the scheduling of dates for the consultation be delegated to the Licensing and Trading Standards Manager to agree in consultation with the Chair of Licensing Committee to avoid that pre-election period and election days. There aren't any requirements as to who should be consulted in respect of a sex establishment policy, but we've listed a few people in the report that we would normally consult with. We would also consult with a wide range of people, and make sure that the consultation was published widely in the same way that we have in previous consultations and questionnaires. And so the proposal is that we ask you to approve a consultation for this draft policy, not to make any decision on the policy at this time, but simply to approve that consultation for a 12-week period. That's my report, unless anyone has any questions for me. There is legal and partner advice at the end of the report. And obviously Ashley is here should you need any legal advice on the matter.
Thank you, Abby. Has anyone got any members got any questions for clarification for the officers? Yeah, Eleanor.
I just want to check, is there anything in this policy that would address the problem that venues that are not designated sexual entertainment venues can still stage sexual entertainment events?
So I think what you're referring to is the exemption under which they can have events that have relevant entertainment, i.e. sexual entertainment. That exemption is actually under the Licensing Act and permits venues with alcohol license to have up to 11 events per year of no more than 24 hours and no more than one event per month. Because that's under separate legislation, it would be regulated under the Licensing Act. And so some venues have a statement in their licensing conditions that says they won't have any adult entertainment. And so if they indicate on the application form that is the case, then that condition would normally be applied. You can't restrict it under this legislation or this policy, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. And another question. We've got 3 areas of the city where the number of sexual entertainment venues is specified. What's the rules in the rest of the city?
So under the proposed draft policy, the rules in the rest of the city would be that each locality would be defined on application, and the members of the committee would then take a view as to whether that locality was an appropriate locality and what the locality entailed. So this is a proposal. This draft policy proposes simply to maintain those existing localities. It's been held, I believe in case law, and Ash will correct me if I'm wrong, that you can't define a city as a locality. You can't simply say the entire city is one locality because there's so much variance across the city. And so if you were to want to define all the localities in Bristol, you would have to consider each area. Again, it's very difficult to do that by ward, because what might be appropriate on one, or what might be considered appropriate on one ward boundary might then not be considered appropriate across the boundary, as it were. So it's very difficult to define it that way. And so the council's taken the view throughout this policy since 2011 that it's inappropriate to define the entire city or the city by ward, for example, as locality, and it's more appropriate to take the view on each application and define each locality based on each application that comes in.
Thank you.
Fee, next.
Couple of questions. First, I don't know if this is the right time to ask this, but a lot of people have raised the issue of employment and that people's employment being terminated as a result of a decision that might or might not be taken. If Ashley perhaps could clarify whether this has any relevance within licensing or not. And my second question is for Abby, really. As you've said quite clearly, we're not making a decision here. We are deciding whether to put a proposal out for consultation. Can you outline what the steps would be at the end of the consultation? What happens then, please? Just for people who might not be clear, and I'm not entirely sure I'm clear myself, to be honest. Thanks.
Ash, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So on the first point, as far as employment is concerned, that's not a consideration for you when deciding whether or not a locality is an appropriate place to have a sexual entertainment venue.
So in terms of steps that would happen after this, so if the committee today were minded to approve the consultation, this draft policy would be put out for 12 weeks for consultation, as I've said, with a wide range of stakeholders and other people. And after that time, it would go back to the working group to make any changes if necessary, and then a policy brought before the committee for final approval. and the committee would then have all the information, so everything that's contained in this report, everything from the new consultation before them, and they would then make a decision about whether to implement that policy, taking into consideration all of the information that's been given, the Public Sector Equality Duty and Equalities Act, and all the information before them. That would be then the final decision, and the policy would be implemented if approved.
Thanks, that's really, really helpful. And just to sort of say publicly, thanks, Abby, for all the work you put into this, because I know it's been fairly mighty over the years. So yeah, you've done a great job as far as you can. Cheers.
Can I perhaps just go further in the answer to the point you make, Councillor Hans? Whilst when you're looking at the locality and making a decision as to whether or not it's appropriate, that aspect of it, you know, whether people are put out of work would not be an appropriate consideration. However, obviously, when you're looking at the public sector equality duty in that respect, it may be something that would come into the balancing, just to clarify that.
Thank you. Any more questions for clarification? In which case we can then follow with some time for a debate.
Yeah, I think.
Oh, Lucy.
Lucy.
Sorry. You're still on mute, Lucy.
Hello.
That's it.
Yeah, I was moved by the issue of people being losing work because of any licensing decision we might make in the future. So I wanted to ask if we could approach Helen Godwin to see what support the council could offer in terms of retraining, mentoring, education for anyone who might lose their job as a result of a licensing decision.
Is that a question that can be answered, or is that?
I wondered if, as a licensing committee, we could ask the cabinet to look into it.
I think that may come at the end, after when they sit down to look into what goes forward after the consultation, or as part of following the consultation, I would guess.
Yeah, it felt important to me that we kind of recognised that that was an issue, and it was one the council could mitigate.
Okay, thank you. Richard.
As a member of the SCV working group, this does seem like Groundhog Day, the film, to me. I have consistently opposed dropping the cap to nil, and this is why. First of all, we are asked to actually not to give our taste, our moral view, whether we believe these sort of clubs should exist. We're actually asked to weigh up the crime statistics and the evidence and say if we believe there's a link. In my view, there is no link proved at all. Thirdly, we've all been written to by Councillor Mark Wright, who was too late for the public forum. Now, Mark was councillor for the city centre for years, which at that time included up to 6 adult clubs. He said in all that time, no evidence had been provided of any of them causing ASB or crime, where plenty existed elsewhere. To me, that's quite crucial, and he certainly asked us to reject this change. Fourthly, I would say the existing clubs, we've heard both from our licensing officers and the dancers and the club owners, are well run and well regulated. So I can't see any evidence of that we should drop it to nil. In my view, that would be a grave mistake. Also, I fear and share the concerns of your speakers of pushing this activity underground. Frankly, they're regulated and controlled at present. I gravely fear pushing them underground where the women and men who work there won't have any defence or support. Finally, I also ask about the timing. As we've heard, our businesses and our people are struggling to survive and recover from COVID. These clubs haven't been open, and the dancers haven't worked for 12 months almost. Are we seriously going to actually make these people unemployed? That seems monstrous. Finally, I would say, in my view, we have to actually look at whether we should go to a nil cap. In my view, common sense and actually defence of the interests of the workers actually mean we should keep the current cap rather than pandering to the views of the Fawcett Society. That's the sort of morality I think we should vote for.
Thank you. I'm Paul Goggin.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask Abby about the consultation and the mechanics of the consultation, if that's okay. What are we doing to ensure the validity of participants, and are we restricting it to Bristol residents this time round?
Thank you. There's been no proposal to restrict it to Bristol residents. However, the previous consultation that we've undertaken did ask for a postcode, and it records a unique identifier, IP address related. So you can be sort of relatively assured that there's not, 100 people all doing it from the same IP address. It is sort of unique submissions. I don't know that we would look to restrict it to Bristol. I think there are a number of national organisations who would want to comment on from both sides, and so I think that would be probably my preference would be to allow anyone to contribute. And I think it can be shown from the previous consultation that it's a pretty robust process. 1,000 responses is great, but also we know that those are unique responses, and not just somebody sitting at a computer and feeding that information in each time. Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yeah, sort of. With regards to the IP addresses, how would you address the rise of VPNs that everybody is using now, NordVPN and stuff? You see them all advertised on the telly, which means you can change your IP address at will as many times as you want during a session.
I mean, I think I would say that I'm fairly confident that we don't have that, a number of very, very similar submissions all at once. And the opportunity to add comments at the end of each question means that you can identify that actually there are a number of different people, because although the consultation response, the response to the question might be the same, the additional comment at the end is going to be fairly different. So I'm fairly confident that we don't have any issues with multiple submissions from individuals.
Could we not ask for a full name and address, which we would keep confidential, just to ensure that every entry is individual?
We've spoken with the consultation team previously about that, and that's not something that we would normally do, because it may discourage people from from submissions. That there's been a number of obviously high profile, not within Bristol, but in a number of other councils, a number of high profile accidental disclosures of information. And so I think people would be more inclined to respond to the committee if they're not obliged to give a name and address for each submission. Again, I think that would possibly undermine, their confidence in the consultation.
Thank you, Abby. That's my questions.
Harriet, your hand went up and back down. Did you still want to speak?
I thought we'd gone back to questions, so I think
we blurred. I think we blurred statements. I think we're in statements now. So yeah. If you've got to carry on.
Most people on the committee know my background. I'm ex-military. I am one of the younger members of the committee. I've been on nights out in Bristol prior to my accidents and stuff repeatedly. If we were going to choose to close any single club in Bristol to make the nightlife safer, it would not be Urban Tiger and Central Chambers. It would be somewhere like the O2 Academy. There are far more rapes and assaults associated with the nightclubs in Bristol than there are with the SEVs. Most of the individuals who I have had cause to ask in the past, including military personnel in the city, didn't actually know where our SEVs were, which say that they are not having the impact on the public arena that people are trying to claim they are. These clubs, I haven't been in them on a night out since I was elected. but they are far better run than ones I've been dragged into by my colleagues in the past. I think that we are looking at an attempt to make a moral decision on a subject that we are supposed to look at from a practical perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Marge.
Right. Well, I think that we can't ignore the fact that casual street harassment of women and domestic homicide are one of the biggest social issues that Bristol has to deal with. And I'm not saying that all of that comes from these two clubs at all, but some of it probably does. And there's also evidence to suggest this. I'm interested in what has just been said about the O2. I don't know anything about that really, but I just think that we can't ignore the fact of the violence against women that is perpetrated from people who attend these venues. And I would also like to just go back to the issue that Lucy raised about potentially the administration looking or considering what opportunities, employment opportunities could possibly be offered to the women who work in these venues, if it was decided after the consultation that they might be closed, even though it wouldn't be immediate, it would be at the end of their license. I just think we need to have all the ducks in a row, as it were. So they're my two comments.
Thank you. On to Brenda.
Thank you, Chair. As a member of the licensing committee, I have been and inspected these clubs a couple of times, along with other people that are present today. And I'm just wondering whether it would be helpful for members if at some point when the restrictions are reduced, whether in fact a site visit to have a look around at the club might be helpful. I do have some serious concerns about the potential for unlicensed, unregulated activities taking place as part of the licenses of some other areas. So I'm just offering that as a suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Fee.
God, this is a really, really difficult one. I think we need to separate out the fact that we are actually looking as to whether we should put something out for consultation. We are not making the decision right now. And I think we're sort of in danger of tipping into the debate as to whether we adopt this proposal or not. But for what it's worth, I think people talk about morality, but there is an issue of ethics around this, which I find quite uncomfortable. I think that history will be on the side of a nil cap, to be perfectly honest, but I'm not convinced that legally we are not going to get sued, and successfully so, by some very powerful vested business interests if you put a nil cap on at the moment. So I'm very torn. I'm inclined to abstain, I'm afraid, which isn't terribly helpful. I'm aware of that. But yes, this is a difficult, complex decision. And I'm grateful to the officers for their clarification and for all the work they put into it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Yep.
Which Chris you want?
Sorry, we got the wrong one.
Sorry, Chris Davis, I saw.
Okay.
Take Chris and then you after Chris.
Sorry, Chair. It's a question actually, not a statement. I just wanted to know where we were with this consultation. Are we voting to have a consultation today after this meeting, or what? If we vote we don't want a consultation, what happens then? That's the question I want to ask. I should have asked it earlier. So if we say no, we don't want to have a consultation, we want to leave things as they are, I think the public need to be clear on what we're doing here today. Is it a consultation? Do we say, yes, we want a consultation? Or do we say, no, we don't want a consultation? That's the question, Abby, I'd like to ask.
Yes, Chair. I wonder if Nick might want to pick that up.
Yeah, thanks, Abby. Thanks, Chris. So the decision before you today is one of just simply asking if you're happy to approve this to go out for consultation. That's the only recommendation in front of you. So if the committee or the view they want to go ahead and consult, then that's what we'll do along the line suggested in the report. But if there's a decision not to go ahead with consult, then it would be, I guess, for the chair to decide what to do with the report, because on the face of it, the report, in effect, there'd be no decision to make. It might be that it would go back to the working group again, but the only report in front of you, the only recommendation is to go out to consult.
Right, yeah. Okay, but thanks very much, Nick. I'm a little bit clearer on that now. So at the end of this meeting, sorry, Chair, at the end of this meeting, if we say no, we don't want a consultation, it'll have to go back to the working party. Is that correct?
Well, I guess it would be the chair's decision, but that would be my thinking, because there's no other opportunity.
Because I'm like Fee, I'm undecided about this really, and more in agreement with Richard as well on this whole thing. Anyway, I won't go into any more discussion on it. I just want to be clear on that one point. Thanks very much, Chair.
I was just going to confirm what we agreed at last meeting, which was that the licence committee delegates the development of establishment policy to the working group. So that's what they've done, and now if that policy needs consultation to go forward, and that's what's come back to here. But how you translate what was given to the working group who made a decision, or what, how we go from here, it gets very complicated. Right, anyone else with comments? Paul, sorry, go to Chris, sorry, and then on to Paul after.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I seem to be as confused as the previous speaker, Chris, was, and I seem to be getting more confused by the minute. Yeah. It does seem to me that we just keep asking questions of people, but not making a decision. This whole process seems to have gone on longer than Brexit, if I may use that term. And I think people are getting fed up with it. I think that there's lots of issues that are being included, which we shouldn't be even considering. We have a situation before us where we need to make a decision. It's gone on too long. It's upset too many people, and it does seem to give the impression that we keep asking the question until we get the answer that somebody wants. And I don't think that's the right way for this full committee to proceed. I'm worried about a further consultation. It's just pushing a decision further and further down the road. Let's get on with it. And when I say get on with it, let's kick this zero suggestion into the long grass. It's dangerous. It's dangerous to the city. It's dangerous to the women in this city. And I don't want it to go in that direction. Now I'll shut up.
Thank you. Paula.
Well, I'm confused as well, because I was on the working group and we got to a stage where we went through the cycle. We listened to all the parties. We did the survey where nearly 60% of citizens said that they were fine with it. We came to a meeting where we were sort of prepared to come to a decision. Then we decided that we needed to look to see whether there was any evidence of a nil cap pushing sex establishments underground. So, there's a hiatus and it goes away. Then I was replaced on the working group, and I come back today, and I really did think that we were going to get to a decision where we could make an absolute decision. So it's very disappointing to hear that we're just going to go back into this circle. So that all we can do today, and I'm still not 100% clear on what we can do today. I mean, are we going to vote to go out to consultation, which is just, as you say, pushing it down the can down the road? But if we vote not to do that, are we voting then for a nil cap? I think we need to be absolutely clear on what's actually happening today. And I think if it's possible, I'm not sure that it will be now with the papers that we have in front of us, but my preference would be for us to make a decision today, if possible. I either keep, accept the policy that's been redrafted or reject it.
Can any of the officers clarify that once more?
Chair, as I understand it, and perhaps I'm not sure if I'm helping or confusing matters here. The report is simply asking to go out to consult on a revised draft policy, which was drafted following the decision of this committee a few months ago to refer it back to the working group. So the only decision, as I see it in terms of what's on the face of the report, is to either go out to consult or not to consult. And if a decision is taken not to consult, then because you haven't got a report in front of you seeking approval of any policy, if you go out to not consult, then we remain in the status quo with the current policy, subject to a decision from the committee to ask the working group to review it. I think that's my kind of take on it. I don't know whether that's helped or not. I don't know if Ashley wants to come in and put a legal perspective on it.
Simply to agree with what you've said, Nick, it's either agree the consultation, go forward with that consultation, or not go forward and go back to the working group and move on from there.
And can I just ask, Ashley, is the statutory obligation to go out to consult on the revised policy?
Yeah, there has to be a consultation in respect of any change of policy. Obviously, this is the one that's been put forward now is different to the one that's been consulted on previously, and therefore the whole process would need to be gone through as it was before in respect of that policy, in respect of the policy for a nil cap.
Thank you, Richard.
Chairman, probably both Nick and Ashley have answered the point I was going to comment. I agree with Chris Windows that we were talking about this until we're blue in the face, constantly raising expectations and dashing it. I hope we agree not to go it to consultation, which means we go back to the current cap figure, which people understand clearly Bristolians approved of.
And Chris Davis.
Yeah, I fully support what Richard just said. Let's make a vote on it now. For goodness sakes, we're going on and on. It's down to you, Mr. Chairman, to call that. We can't go on and have another consultation. It's an indecision all the time. We need to make a vote now.
Marge?
I was just wanting to ask the officers about, they were asked at one point to look at the evidence about whether if we decided to go down the road of a nil cap, whether they were pushing the industry underground. I just wonder whether any of the officers could comment on that.
Okay, so we did make contact with a wide range of local authorities. I think we focused, Abby might be able to add a bit more to what I'm saying. I think we focused on core cities and we couldn't find any evidence of it going underground. Those cities which had adopted a more stringent policy than we had.
That's certainly the case. There are a number of core cities who don't have a nil cap. So that's quite difficult to find whether it's gone underground or not. We also put a wider question out on one of our local government forums and had a couple of responses back on that suggested that they had no evidence that anything had gone underground.
Thank you. Right, Paul Goggins is indicating, and then I'm going to move to the vote then, because as we seem to be going round in circles now.
I just still.
Oh, sorry, Paula. I'll do you and that. So Paul and then Paula, and then we'll move to a vote.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm. Although people are saying that obviously this has been consulted on before and we should just accept that, full committee delegated this decision to the working group. The working group worked hard on coming up with a draft policy with the officers. They've now passed it back. So you're basically, if you're against the consultation, you're just rejecting everything the working group, the cross-party working group came up with. And I don't understand that. If we delegated to the working group, why are we not just accepting what they found? Or is it, has been said before, they didn't find the answer that some people wanted?
Paula, and then...
Well, I just wanted to clarify on Richard and Chris's last statement. So they said that go ahead to the vote, and if we vote not to go ahead with the consultation, then we vote for the status quo, which is what they've said that they'd like. I don't think that's true. That's not what we could. That's erroneous. And maybe Ashley could clarify for us.
Yes, as Nick has stated, the
Sorry if you are misunderstood. If we vote in favour, against a consultation, then we automatically revert to the current cap. We don't need to vote for another movement. So I thought both Chris and I were clear, and in response to Paul's comment, I attended the last working group meeting. In my view, when I wrote to Nick Carter afterwards, I felt our recommendation was inconclusive. A large number of us voted against, some abstained. A majority of those who voted in favour of the recommendation, but there was no unanimity.
That's right.
Nick, did you want to finish your explanation, or?
Chair, apologies. Could I just? I think.
I've gone, Abby.
Yeah, so I think, and Ashley will correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially, if you vote not to go out to consultation on this, there still remains the subject of the policy review, and either the policy review is terminated, and in which case we would revert back to the policy that we currently have in place, which doesn't include any additional information about sex shops. It doesn't include any of the revisions to conditions or any of the revisions to wording to update the policy. So it would be a reversion back to the original policy. If there's a vote not to consult today, then it would need to go back to the working group or wherever to decide what happens with this policy review.
Okay, and I'll just do Lucy and
Chair,
Eleanor.
I'm not sure whether Nick has a comment.
I've got Nick, sorry.
Yeah, can I just pick up on what Abby's saying? Of course, the other thing we need to bear in mind, this policy in its current guise goes back to, I think, 2011. So that's over 10 years, which is a long time for a policy not to be reviewed. So the request to review the policy would still be there. And there is a sense of a cycle with this, but I think Ab is right insofar as it would go back to the working group, and we'd still need to address this need to review the policy in some shape or form and have a formal decision about the review of the policy.
Lucy?
My understanding from what Abby and Nick have said is that voting to not put it out to consultation actually will extend the process even longer. And so I feel like putting this out to consultation keeps the process moving forwards.
Eleanor?
I just wanted to respond to the comment, I can't remember who made it, about that we were rejecting and ignoring the long, hard work of the working group. The working group has been working on this for years. They worked on it for years. They came back with the answer that the current cap was appropriate. They then got sent back to produce more evidence so that we had a kind of solid grounds for making that decision and wouldn't be subject to legal challenge on it. They went away and a few months later came back with a different answer. So if we're worried about rejecting the work of the working group, it's which bit of the work of the working group we choose to reject, because they've come back with two completely different answers over the 5 years or whatever it is that we've been talking about this. So just to say that that's not really an argument.
Back is the last speaker then, she's indicated.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, I think it's probably not a bad thing to go out to consultation. As Nick said, it's been 10 years since this policy was reviewed.
We've lost.
So actually, I think it's a, again, and if the public's view on this is, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Yes, so I was just going to say, I've had to turn my video off because sometimes it's a bit odd, but I was just going to say, look, the policy hasn't been reviewed for 10 years. going out to consultation one more time on this draft policy that the officers have worked very hard to put together, I think is actually a good thing, because it gives the public a chance to tell us again definitively what they think about this new draft policy. So I think it's clear that, and Nick, I'd like it if you could just double check that I'm right on this, but the public haven't actually been consulted on this policy that sits before us today. Am I right in that?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Right, in that case, we'll move to vote. So the working group has put forward a new policy as per what was requested. The question in front of you is whether we put it to consultation. Do it on a show of hands. All those in favour?
Sorry, Chair, that would be a bit difficult for me to
God.
capture because we're on a Zoom. So it would be better if everyone said their names and what their vote is, please.
Okay, if we go through. Brenda, I'll go through them as I see them on my screen.
Please do.
Right. I'm going to abstain on this one.
Richard?
Against.
Paula?
I've never found myself in a position that I like this before, because I still need clarification. I'm so sorry, but I just want to understand that if I vote for this consultation to go forward, it seems to be the logical thing. There's still an opportunity for this to come back to this committee as to whether we vote for a nil cap or to maintain. So I'm safe in voting for the consultation without having had the final decision voted for. So therefore I vote for the consultation.
Yeah, just to confirm, all you're voting for is a consultation. That will be taken into account by a committee in the future, along with other evidence, and they will make a final decision. Chris Davis.
Unmute, please.
Against.
Chris Windows.
Against.
Eleanor.
Against, because we have had a consultation on the alternative.
Yeah, we have.
Lucy?
For, because we haven't had a consultation on a nil cap, and being asked to respond positively or negatively to a different question is a different thing.
Okay, Fee?
Having said abstain, I'm going to vote for the consultation. Let's see what happens with the final policy.
Marge?
For.
Tom?
Against.
Paul?
For.
You're back.
For.
Harriet?
Against. We've had a consultation on this on this set of licensing policies. It wasn't a majority against them, and I am frustrated with this process and how it's been handled.
And I think I've got two Toms, but that's me then, and I'm for as well. So what's the tally?
Just bear with me.
Sorry, cheers.
Abstained. Let me see how many people abstained. One. Margaret, right, okay. So against is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and yourself 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So that's 7 for, 6 against.
In that case, that then moves to consultation. Then, if we can move to agenda item 7. This one hopefully will be a little bit quicker. It's the City Centre Cumulative Impact Assessment. And can I ask Carl to present the report to the committee, please?
Thank you, Chair. So as you correctly said, this is a report to consider whether it's appropriate to publish a cumulative impact assessment in respect of the city centre area of Bristol. The draft policy, which was consulted upon, is Appendix A of your papers. That's page 622 of your background papers today. So the background to this is that, as you're all aware, on the 7th of July last year, full council approved a new statement of licensing policy that runs until July 2025. At that time, it was not proposed, or full council didn't approve the publishing of a cumulative impact assessment. Instead, they directed officers to carry out a consultation on the draft cumulative impact assessment, and that was because over the course of the consultation for the statement of policy, the police presented information that in effect recommended the previous CIA that was in force be amended to reduce the area to exclude the broadleaf area. And that was because the evidence they had said that that area was no longer at saturation point and didn't need to be included in what was the previous CIA. So the proposal today for the CIA states that the city centre remains at saturation point, and the area which has a significant concentration of alcohol-led late-night venues witnesses a high number of assaults and other related crime and disorder, including public nuisance and risk to public safety. The CIA will apply to further applications for the grant of new licences or significant variations of existing licences in respect of premises that primarily sell alcohol for consumption on the premises, other late-night uses, restaurants and takeaway outlets. The main focus of the assessment is likely to be on alcohol-led establishments and premises that keep customers in the area at times when the promotion of the licensing objectives is the most challenging, for example, late-night refreshment and fast food outlets. So we consulted, as corrected, from September through to the end of October last year. We received 312 responses to the online survey, and those results are in the report. But the highlights are that 71% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed with the proposal to publish a cumulative impact assessment for the city centre. 17% of respondents disagreed or strongly disagreed with the proposal of the CIA, and 8% had neither agreed or disagreed. Of the people that responded, 77% were members of the public, and 4% of respondents identified as a business owner or manager that holds a premises licence. We've done a full analysis of the results, and that's in Appendix B or page 630 of your report. We did also receive two separate written responses, so separate to the online consultation. One response was from the Bristol at Night panel. They represent Bristol's nighttime economy venues, really, and that might explain why so few premises licence holders actually responded to the online survey. A second response was from TLT, who are a law firm with offices in Bristol. They provide specialist licensing advice. Both of their responses are at page 656 of your report. Both responses suggest that the decision be postponed until the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic is known. So, as I said, the proposal today is to publish the draft cumulative impact assessment. The proposed CIA assessment, or the assessment, is the same as the one that we consulted upon. We've not proposed any amendments as a result of the feedback we've received. The evidence that we've got that's in the report shows that the area does have a high number of incidents related to crime and disorder and public nuisance and risk to public safety. And these are linked to the significant concentration of alcohol-led late-night venues that we have in the area. Now, clearly the data we have relates to a time pre-pandemic. So this data relates to when people were going out before the pandemic hit. Now, we obviously know that we don't know the full impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. We don't know how that's going to impact the licence trade. There's a table at page 617 of your report which shows how our applications and licences have been affected so far. Obviously, we're seeing far fewer number of applications. But what our data also shows at the moment is that we've seen less surrenders and less lapsed licences in the same period in the last year period. So it's not what we would expect to see at the moment. I've had a quick look at the figures since December to the end of February this year, and in that period we've had no lapsed licences recorded and only 5 additional surrenders. So that's still down from the same time in the last year period. That said, we don't always become aware of lapsed licences. Often we don't become aware until up to 12 months after the event. And that's because if, for example, a limited company fails, there's no automatic notification period, and we often don't become aware until we chase the annual fee for the premises. So whilst we know the premises are struggling as a result of the pandemic, we simply don't know how many licenses might cease to exist, and we don't know how many licensed premises will actually be able to reopen once the lockdown restrictions are lifted. As a result, I mean, clearly one option for members today would be to not publish an assessment and wait and see how the land lies after the lockdown's eased. That said, the evidence we currently hold does support the view that the number of licenses that are currently in force and are still in force, and their operation when they are open, is at a level that would be inconsistent with the promotion of the licensing objectives to allow more people to come into the area, or to allow those licenses to be amended in any way. We've got no evidence to suggest that once lockdown eases, that the same crime disorder that was previously experienced won't return. And on that basis, we are recommending that we do adopt the cumulative impact assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. Questions first for the officers. Eleanor?
Can I just check if there's a cumulative impact assessment in place, it will be made more difficult for new venues to apply for licenses. There will be that presumption of the license being granted will be not in play. Will that number that we're starting from be fixed at the number of licenses that are currently active in the city centre? Because what I'm not explaining myself very well. What I'm concerned about is that if venues close due to COVID and licenses are given up, we'll start again from a much lower baseline, and we'll have far below the number that actually would result in saturation at the city centre. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, I've really explained that very badly.
No, that makes complete sense, Councillor. I do understand. So it's perfectly permissible for a cumulative impact assessment to bring down the number of licensed premises, but in reality, it's not really the number of premises that we're really looking at. It's the crime or disorder or public nuisance that those premises cause. So, we talk about saturation levels. So it could be in a city centre, you don't have that many premises, but the saturation levels that they're causing because of the number of people that are going to them and the impact of those, that's creating the issues, and that's why you need a cumulative impact assessment. So it could be that, and I can't give you a number that's the correct number to have, it could be that we do need to drastically reduce the number, or it could be it doesn't need to go down very much. But what would be guided on is the crime and disorder data that we receive from Avon and Somerset Constabulary. And that's what we'd look at to establish whether an assessment's needed or whether it's not needed in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before we go to debate? No, has anyone got a view on this then before we take a vote? I don't know.
I mean, I think the police provided really solid evidence of the need for a cumulative impact assessment in the city centre. And I think as a licensing authority, we have a responsibility to really weigh heavily the guidance and the views of the police on this. So I would support going forward.
Thank you. Any other comments before we go to the vote? Chris Windows.
Thank you. Yeah, we're in this position where we're looking at two alternatives here. One is that we have a cumulative impact area. I don't like saying that this time in the morning. And the other side of the coin is that we rely on the police to provide with information, to provide an objection if they feel that any particular application is going to cause more problems. So we decide whether we do it one way or we do it the other. I feel it's helpful to have a CIA in the centre of the city. It doesn't mean to say that you have to refuse an application because it's in a CIA, but it does mean to say that you have to give it a lot more consideration. So I think I'll vote in favour of a CIA.
Thank you, Richard.
Very briefly, I support Eleanor and Chris's views. I'll vote in favour.
Harriet?
I'm I'll vote in favour of the CIA. I'd just like to register that I am frustrated with the police's lack of willingness to provide the evidence for the other CIAs that we previously had. And as somebody who sits on a lot of committees, the police have failed to turn up in a number of occasions where I would have liked them to have done so in order to answer questions. So to lose the CIA as a presumption not to grant would result in poorer quality decisions being made.
Thank you. Chris
Thank you.
Davis.
Yes, Barry, I'm fully in supportive of CIA in this area. I know that police have got understaffed in lots of areas, but it's most important. That's where all these nightclubs and places arise, and we need to have their presence or their information available. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's everyone. In that case, I've gone Paul. Sorry,
You've left me out, Chair, sorry.
sorry, I didn't see you. Here back, and then Paul.
Thank you. I was just going to say, I agree with everyone that's spoken so far. To my mind, I can't see any reason why we wouldn't have a cumulative impact area in the city centre. I'm just wondering whether the officers can shed light on why we wouldn't. It just seems so obvious to me. Am I missing something?
So it's completely discretionary. You don't, unlike with the statement of licensing policy, which has to exist, it's completely up to the licensing authority whether you choose to have a CIA in place. If you do choose to have one, you must be satisfied that the area is effectively at saturation point. So it's discretionary. If you're happy looking at the evidence before you that it's appropriate to have one, then by all means the committee will adopt one. But it's a purely discretionary matter.
Thank you for that, Carl. That really explains it. Well, in that case, it is discretionary, but over the years we've all heard from the police officers, and the city centre is undoubtedly at saturation point. So from that point of view, I think it's important that we do have a CIA. Thank you.
Paul.
Paul.
Oh, you want comment in? Just want to get ready with the vote, right? In that case, we shall. Do you want this vote done the same, Claudette, or can we? Because we seem to be all like-minded. Can we just go for?
Okay, if it's like-minded, go ahead.
If we go for a show of hands, then.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I counted a majority there quite easily. So we'll take that as a pass then for approving the recommendation of the officer. Thank you very much. In that case, that brings this meeting to an end. Thank you for the members, the officers, and the members of the public that have come, and have a good day.
Thank you, Chair.